Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Tehami and these are the headlines. Pakistan has condemned a statement by the Indian Air Force chief that India is ready for a two-front war with China and Pakistan. At a weekly press briefing, Foreign Office spokesperson Zahid Hafiz Chaudhry termed the remarks as irresponsible and provocative. He said the Indian Air Chief should not forget his country's defense limitations. NATO chief says members will consult and decide together on the timeline to leave Afghanistan. In a press conference, Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said NATO will end its mission in Afghanistan only when conditions allow. This follows US President Donald Trump's vow to bring American troops home by this Christmas. Russia says Armenia and Azerbaijan have confirmed their foreign ministers' visit to Moscow for peace talks. A spokesperson for the Russian Foreign Ministry said active preparations for the dialogue are now underway. Earlier, President Vladimir Putin called for a humanitarian ceasefire in Nagorno-Karabakh and invited the foreign ministers for talks. At least 400 people have been killed in the fighting since it broke out on the 27th of September. In Kyrgyzstan, President Jeenbekov has declared a state of emergency in Bishkek amid unrest over last week's parliamentary polls. The president's office said troops will be deployed in the capital to prevent any armed clashes. Earlier, Jeenbekov said he would resign once a new cabinet is formed. Europe has reported nearly 97,000 new COVID-19 cases, the highest overnight toll for the region. India has registered 964 deaths and over 70,000 cases in the last 24 hours, with infections steadily crossing 6.9 million. In Pakistan, 8 people have died overnight, taking the death toll to 6,552. Globally, the infection tally has crossed 36.5 million, with over 1 million deaths. Those are the headlines and detailed stories right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. Pakistan has condemned a statement by the Indian Air Force chief that India is ready for a two-front war with China and Pakistan. At a weekly press briefing, Foreign Office spokesperson Zahid Hafiz Chaudhry termed the remarks as irresponsible and provocative. He said the Indian Air Chief should not forget his country's defense limitations. Chaudhry asked India not to underestimate the resolve of the Pakistani nation against any misadventure. The spokesperson said New Delhi must abandon its hostile actions for peace in the region. He also condemned extrajudicial killings of Kashmiris at the hands of Indian occupation forces. He said Indian troops have murdered 19 Kashmiris in September alone. NATO says its members will consult and decide together on the timeline to leave Afghanistan. This follows US President Donald Trump's vow to bring American troops home by this Christmas. Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said NATO will end its mission in Afghanistan only when conditions allow. In a press conference, Stoltenberg said it is in NATO's interest to preserve the long-term security of Afghanistan. He added the alliance will leave when there is no risk of the country becoming a militant's haven again. NATO ended its combat operations in Afghanistan in 2014, but maintains a force of 12,000 to train the local forces. Russia says Armenia and Azerbaijan have confirmed their foreign ministers' visit to Moscow for peace talks. At least 400 people have been killed in the fighting in Nagorno-Karabakh since the 27th of September. A spokesperson for the Russian Foreign Ministry said active preparations for the talks are now underway. Earlier, President Vladimir Putin called for a humanitarian ceasefire in the region and invited the two foreign ministers for the dialogue. France's US and Russian representatives are also set to meet in Moscow on Monday to seek a ceasefire. Meanwhile, Armenia reports another 26 deaths among its military, increasing their side's toll to 376. In Kyrgyzstan, President Sooronbay Jeenbekov has declared a state of emergency in capital Bishkek amid unrest over last week's parliamentary polls. In a statement, the president's office said troops will be deployed in the capital to prevent any armed clashes. It said curfew and tight security restrictions will be imposed during the emergency, effective from today until October the 21st. Earlier, Jeenbekov said he would resign once a new cabinet is formed. This comes after he signed an order dismissing Prime Minister Kubatbek Boronov and his cabinet. Boronov and other lawmakers tendered their resignations after opposition groups seized government buildings. The protesters were calling for the government to resign over alleged vote rigging in the elections. The US has imposed sweeping sanctions on Iran's banking sector aimed at crippling Tehran's economy. The move can largely cut off Iran from the world's financial system just as it tries to cope with the COVID-19 pandemic. In a statement, the Treasury Department said it has sanctioned 18 major Iranian banks. Last month, President Donald Trump announced that his administration is imposing sanctions on Iran's central bank. Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif reacted strongly to the latest curbs. In a tweet, he said Washington is targeting Tehran's remaining channels to pay for food and medicine in the midst of a pandemic. Zarif said conspiring to starve a population is a crime against humanity. Syria's president says regaining the control of occupied Syrian territories is the major precondition for any peace talks with Israel. In an interview, Bashar al-Assad said Syria's stance has been very clear since the peace talks with Israel began in the 1990s. The president said peace for Syria is related to the rights of its people and a right to its territories. But he said no Israeli official is ready to move one step forward towards making peace with Damascus. He said no negotiations are currently taking place between the two. Syria and Israel have been arch enemies, particularly since the war in 1967, when Israel occupied the Syrian Golan Heights. In the US, the FBI says it has foiled a plot to abduct and overthrow Michigan's Democratic governor, Gretchen Whitmer. Officials say the kidnapping plot involved 6 men who planned to hold a treason trial for Whitmer. The group planned to gather 200 men to storm the Capitol building and take hostages, including Governor Whitmer. The FBI said that the group decided to attack the governor at her home if their first plan failed. It said the accused held weapons training in several states and at times attempted to create bombs. At a press conference, the governor tied the plot against her to President Donald Trump's incendiary rhetoric. She said the president was stoking distrust and giving comfort to those who spread fear, hatred, and division. Michigan's governor had become a lightning rod for coronavirus skeptics after enacting strict measures. Venezuela's National Constituent Assembly has approved a law expanding President Nicolas Maduro's powers. The law allows Maduro to confidentially sign new oil deals with the firms and foreign nations in response to U.S. sanctions. Assembly's President Diosdado Cabello said they can provide a legal instrument to continue fighting the U.S. blockade. The law will allow changes to ownership of joint ventures between the state oil company and private firms. Maduro's government faces severe financial problems amid limitations on the export by Washington. In Mali, kidnapped French aid worker Sophie Petnonen and opposition leader Soumaïla Cisse have been freed. In a statement, Mali's presidency said the ex-hostages have been taken to the capital, Bamako. It said 2 other Italian nationals have also been freed. In a Twitter post, French President Emmanuel Macron expressed immense relief on release. Macron also expressed France's continued support for Mali in its fight against an insurgency. Sisi supporters gathered at Bamako airport to greet the opposition leader on his arrival. China has formally signed an agreement to join the World Health Organization-led COVAX facility. The project is aimed at developing at least 3 safe and effective vaccines for all the scheme's participants. In a tweet, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson said the decision was an important step to uphold the concept of health for all. She said China has ample COVID-19 vaccine manufacturing capabilities. The spokesperson said Beijing will prioritize supplying vaccine to developing countries once it is ready. COVAX facility aims to deliver 2 billion doses of vaccine globally by next year's end. The Chinese government has said it may have a coronavirus vaccine available as early as next month. The World Health Organization has reported a record one-day increase in global coronavirus cases in the last 24 hours. The total cases increased by over 338,000, while the previous WHO record was over 330,000 on October the 2nd. The unabated outbreak in India has claimed more than 106,000 lives, while infecting over 6.8 million people. More in this report.
The second wave of COVID-19 has broken all past records of single-day surge, reminding the world that the pandemic is far from over. After managing to wriggle out of the eye of the COVID-19 storm, Europe is once again in the red zone with record-high new cases. France has announced new restrictions to curb the aggressive spread of the virus.
Vous avez raison.
The virus has been spreading faster for several weeks as part of our strategy in places where it's spreading too quickly, and particularly where it's spreading a lot among elderly people who are the most vulnerable. And where we see more and more emergency beds taken up, we need to move towards more restrictions.
U.S. President Donald Trump has been cleared for public appearance by his doctors after recovering from COVID-19. While the U.S. remains the worst-hit country, the disease continues to rip through Latin America and India, with the vaccine as the only hope. World Health Organization chief says a COVID-19 vaccine can be available as early as the end of this year.
At the same time, we have to invest in new technology, and that's why we launched the ACT Accelerator. We will need vaccines, and there is hope that by the end of this year, we may have a vaccine. There is hope.
In Africa, the coronavirus crisis is expected to drive a 3.3% economic contraction in sub-Saharan African economies. The World Bank has warned that the global pandemic can push around 40 million Africans into extreme poverty. Meanwhile, the disease is once again surging in Iran, which has reported its highest daily surge in new cases overnight.
In Pakistan, 8 more people have lost their lives to COVID-19 during the last 24 hours, raising the death toll to 6,552. The Health Ministry says 661 people tested positive in a day. The ministry said there are 8,335 total active cases in the country. It said out of over 317,000 cases detected so far, more than 302,000 have recovered. The ministry said over 139,000 cases have been detected in the Sindh province, while over 100,000 have been reported in Punjab. In the federal capital, Islamabad, over 17,000 people have contracted the virus. More stories to follow right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Hurricane Delta of Category 3 is headed towards U.S. southwestern state of Louisiana. The U.S. National Hurricane Center says Delta can cause storm surges along portions of the northern Gulf Coast. It is forecast to make landfall between the cities of Lake Charles and Lafayette. The Hurricane Center warns the storm can unleash tornadoes as it moves over land and drops up to 10 inches of rain. The NHC says Delta, with maximum sustained winds of 120 miles per hour, can later weaken. This will be the 10th named storm to make a U.S. landfall this year, breaking a record held since 1916. The UN's World Food Programme has won the Nobel Peace Prize for its efforts to combat hunger. Norwegian Nobel Committee's chairperson says the WFP acted as a driving force to prevent the use of hunger as a weapon of war. The chairperson said the agency has also demonstrated impressive abilities during the pandemic. A spokesperson for the UN Food Agency said this is a proud moment, nothing short of a feat. The award is worth $1.1 million and will be awarded in Norway's capital city of Oslo on the 10th of December. China has witnessed 637 million domestic tourist visits during the country's National Day holiday period. Ministry of Culture and Tourism said the number amounted to 79% of the total trips taken in the same period last year. It said revenue generated by domestic tourism during 1st to 8th of October break has reached $70 billion. The total sales volume of major businesses in the retailing and catering industries has reached around $0.24 trillion. Sales of monitored businesses in Beijing, Shanghai, Gansu and Henan provinces achieved double-digit growth. A 6-year-old French concert pianist is making waves on the internet with his rare talent for playing piano. Guillaume Benoliel came into spotlight in late August in Salzburg in Austria, the birthplace of composer Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. More in this report.
At the nascent age of 1, Guillaume Benoliel would sit on his mother's knee and play with the piano keys at home. His parents, Claire and Dominique, both of them amateur musicians, realized he could hear a tune and then play it himself.
I think that we realized when he was very young that he was able to reproduce sounds that he later played on the piano. And later on, people have told us that he was able to recognize sounds, that he has a perfect musical ear.
Guillaume's parents sent him for his first piano lesson at the age of 4. His teacher, Sergei Kuznetsov, says the young boy has a rare talent which he hasn't seen before.
Very early on, we recognized this capability that he has, being able to replay little songs only by ear. Guillaume has a rare talent. I met talented people in my career, but not like him. In fact, when I talk about a talent, it's a mix of things, a mix of mind, heart, and hands.
The little maestro's feet dangle in the air when Guillaume Benoliel sits at the piano stool rehearsing Rachmaninoff's Italian polka for a forthcoming concert. He has expressed desire to learn a second instrument, a violin, that he received as a gift from his grandmother.
An Iraqi artist is making a name for his country and for himself by creating art through strings and nails. Though the art is rare, it remains difficult for him to sell his pieces at a good price in his own country, but the challenges have not dampened the spirits of the 26-year-old graduate in sports. This report has the details.
String art is time-consuming and requires a lot of concentration. But for the skilled hands of Saeed Huwaidi, the art comes naturally to him. He has made portraits of many big names, including Iraqi footballer Ahmed Radi, as well as global star Cristiano Ronaldo.
To reach this level, I did and failed about 100 pieces until, thank God, I reached my current level. This art is rare at a global level. There are only a few string artists. In Iraq, it is not present at all.
String art is believed to have first been developed at the end of the 19th century to help children understand mathematics. Each piece takes about 10 to 15 days to complete. Through practice and perseverance, Huwaidi says he can now create portraits as well.
To be honest, I consider this to be my source of income. I practice this art and have sold many paintings. There are different levels. In the beginning, I wasn't doing portraits because portraits are very difficult and need a high level of concentration and energy.
Huwaidi has proved that with hard work and skills, you can even transform something as mundane as nails into beautiful art. Now he wants to start crafting larger pieces and gain recognition in Iraq and beyond.
European Union lawmakers have broken talks with the EU government representatives of the bloc's budget. Countries are divided over the EU negotiators' push for €1.8 trillion coronavirus recovery package. EU lawmakers say more funds are needed to finance key programs, including for infrastructure, defense, and student exchanges. In a tweet, spokesman for Germany said a willingness to compromise is needed on all sides. Delays in reaching a deal can further damage the EU economy as many sectors rely on the EU funds. Talks will resume in the coming days, and if a deal is reached eventually, national parliaments will then have to ratify it. The selection of a new Director General of the World Trade Organization is entering its final stage, and a female looks set to take the reins. The last two on the list are former Nigerian Finance Minister Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala and South Korean Trade Minister Yo Myung-hae. The WTO said the two women are the remaining candidates for the top position after the field was narrowed down. It said the final candidate will replace incumbent chief Roberto Azevedo. The WTO will start a third and final selection round from the 19th of October. European markets have traded higher as investors monitor talks on fresh coronavirus relief package. The pan-European stock 600 edged up, with retail stocks adding over 1%. London's FTSE led the gains by trading nearly 1% higher, while Paris's CAC 40 also closed over 0.5%. Frankfurt's DAX traded 0.25% higher, while Italy's FTSE MIB slipped marginally lower. In football, Argentina beat Ecuador 1-0 to bag full 3 points in the World Cup qualifier. Lionel Messi scored the match winner from the spot after Lucas Ocampos was tackled inside the penalty area. While the goalkeeper was guessing the right way, Messi went to his left to score. Argentina had another great chance early in the second half when goalkeeper saved a low-driven shot by Ocampos. In other qualifiers for Latin America, Paraguay draw level with Peru 2-2, while Uruguay edged Chile 2-1. Goalkeeper Edouard Mendy has returned to Chelsea after injuring his right thigh while training with Senegal. The 28-year-old joined the Blues on a 5-year deal last month. Chelsea say Mendy had a medical examination in a hospital in Rabat, where Senegal are due to play Morocco. The Blues will play Southampton at Stamford Bridge on 17th of October after the international break. And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News.